Hello, family. My name is James Trice, and I'm the creator of a podcast called YANA, or You Are Not Alone. You Are Not Alone is a podcast for Black men. It is more than just a podcast. It's a lifeline and a brotherhood. We're here to create a supportive, judgment-free space where Black men can have real, open conversations about what truly matters to us, from family and relationships to community, sports, culture, politics, faith, sex, race, education, and the challenges of everyday life. We dive deep into it all. Whether you're looking for advice, motivation, prayer, or just a comfort of knowing you're not walking this journey alone. YANA is here for you. This is your space to connect, grow, and be heard, because none of us are meant to do life alone. Look for new episodes weekly wherever you get your podcasts. And look for me on Instagram at jbtrice123. Welcome to YANA. Grace and peace, everyone. This is James Trice. Welcome again to another episode of YANA. You are not alone. This is a space for Black men to come together, talk, to be heard, to be listened to express how we feel about issues that matter most to us. It's a space where we walk this life's journey together as Black men, because we're never meant to do life alone. And I have a friend of mine who's on today's episode. I've been known for many, many years. He's like a brother to me, actually. And I want to introduce him to you, and we're going to get right into the conversation. Rufus Thibodeaux. I want to welcome you to this episode of YANA. Please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, man. And we are like brothers. I mean, I think that we probably have known each other, do I want to say 40 years? 30 plus for sure. It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
Anyway, so as you said, my name is Rufus Thibodeaux. And, honestly, James, I just feel like I'm just a man that finally woke up. I feel like what I mean by that is that I grew up in church. I loved the Lord, knew the scriptures, but I had no idea that the Bible wasn't just a book of stories, but it was actually a story about me. I mean, about us. And so, yeah, as far as vocation, I am an entrepreneur. I am a writer. I would say that I am a spiritual architect, which, what I mean by that is that I work to build frameworks that help men to reclaim their identity, their faith, and their legacy. In particular, Black men. And I've just recently finished a couple books that are aligned with that. One is called um, Eden to Eternity Rescue Mission, and that's basically look at the entire Bible as one connected story about identity, about redemption, and really a father who was on a rescue mission to get his sons back home. The other one is called Stolen, and that's a book. It's a modern day novel about a Black man who discovers that he's an heir to a multi-billion-dollar inheritance that was stolen by a prominent, white family generations ago, and then they buried that along with his true identity. And so both books are, a little bit different in terms of the format, but the heartbeat is the same, which is really just helping men to wake up to who they are, and to take back what was stolen. So,
wow, that's fascinating, man.
yeah.
How has your books and your work, how has it impacted men in the past? Can you give some examples of men's lives that have been impacted, and what have you
Yeah,
seen as a result of you engaging men and being that architect for them?
sure. Um, you know, um, it's really interesting, man, because growing up as a pastor's kid, you remember my father used to have these, these men's groups, men's events, and he would always want me and my brother to preach, this father and son night, and dude, I hated it. It
Mm.
was something that I just didn't see myself. That wasn't me. And so it's crazy that now, um, that's awakened, it's come alive. And so in terms of connecting with other guys, I just have been sharing what I have been through. And it's kind of like we were talking about before you started recording, just that things that you have done just to figuring out life. I mean, even from an entrepreneurial perspective, being an entrepreneur, nobody taught me how to do that. So I made lots of mistakes, but I learned a lot in that process. So I'm just sharing with guys what I've learned. And it's interesting how people connect with that. Just like, wow, you know what? I have been experiencing the same thing. And a lot about identity, who we are. So yeah, so I've got several guys that have been that have asked me to mentor them, which is totally crazy because I'm not out here, you know what I mean? Hey, I'm a mentor, I'm
Right.
looking for, and it's just because it's crazy that I actually have something to share with them just out of the things that I've gone through, mostly the mistakes that I've made. And I could, I could say, hey man, I could tell you what not to do, but in that
Right.
process, I'm just learning. So yeah, so sharing with men, and I think that the books and all those things, I wrote them really for me, you know what I mean? But I'm realizing that they're information and they're lessons that other people could benefit from as well. So what started off really as just, I mean, I feel like the one of the best ways to teach is, I mean, one of the best ways to learn is to teach. I kind of
Mm.
found that out backwards. So
Wow. Okay.
as I started to learn these things, the opportunity came to share them, and that's kind of how it's been. So then I was like, wow, look at how these things are connected, and I started seeing the connection, and it just became kind of a framework. So it didn't start off like, hey, I'm going to create all this stuff. I want to do this. It was just me trying to figure out, kind of put the pieces together. Like, wow, I have this
Hmm.
interest, and I got this over here, and kind of putting them all together. So anyway, I'm going all off topic, but
No, no, you're good. You're good.
okay,
No, this is
cool,
wonderful. This is wonderful. How has finding your identity as a black man
yeah.
impacted your life, man? And how has it manifested in different areas of your life?
Yeah. It's been like somebody turned the lights on. You know what I mean? Like I've been walking around in the dark and somebody turned the lights
Mm-hmm.
on. So what I started to see that as I was reading. Now here's the other thing is the Bible. I mentioned to you in one of our conversations that just through reading the Bible, I kind of discovered a kind of a framework that has made the Bible really easier to understand and for me to easier to read and more exciting to read. And it's just I found kind of a thread. So let me back up. I started to look first, I thought that the Old Testament and the New Testament were separate. I thought that it was, and again, these books about, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Noah and all these names, but I started to see that it was one story. And I started to see, like, wait a minute, in the Old Testament, their mindset was different. It was like they were servants. And then in the New Testament, they were, it was more like sons. Jesus was a son. So I started to see that um, but the whole story was that a son. So the Old Testament to me is kind of like the son who became a slave. So
Hmm.
and then after that, then the New Testament is God sending your big brother to come and save the lost sons, and he was showing them
Hmm.
how to be a son. This is what it means to be. So like, yeah, in the Old Testament, like God is the creator, we can't even pronounce his name, we can't even say his name out
Right.
loud. But
Right.
Jesus is saying, hey, yeah, this is different. It's a different situation now. So he's not only he's your father, but he's your papa, and I'm your brother.
Hmm.
So, and he was showing us, like, here's how you handle life as a son of God. I mean, when the devil comes, here's how you handle that. Sickness, here's how you handle it.
Hmm.
So, and then I think in the epistles, that was really Paul primarily, but the other apostles taking us kind of behind the scenes of what happened when Jesus came. What did that
Hmm.
represent? How did that help us?
Hmm.
So as I
Hmm.
started to see that, I started to say, wait a minute, you know what? I'm not a servant, first of all, I'm a
Hmm.
son. And as a son, here's what that looks like. Here's who I am, and here's how I need to act and behave. And so I started to see there was a clear difference. And then I started to see, man, that one of the biggest problems I think that men face, in particular black men, is identity. We don't know who we are. So eh, the primary reason why Adam messed up was because he forgot who he was.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, and every man born after him since that time has been struggling to find out who they are. And that's one of
Hmm.
the problems that we have right now in society is people don't know who, I mean, am I a man? Am I a woman?
Wow. Yeah.
Am I a
Hmm.
dad? Am I you know, I mean, who am I? And what am I? And so, and once you find out who you are, that changes everything. It changes everything. So you know what? It's one thing to love somebody. It's a completely different thing to know that you're loved. Totally
Right.
different thing. And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, so anyway, so as I started to see those things, I started to put those pieces together. And then as I was sharing those things with other people, I saw lights coming on for them. Like, wow, I didn't know
Right.
that's what it was. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was like somebody turned the lights on for me. I was walking around in the dark, somebody turned the lights on. Yeah.
So how's that played out in, let's say, your marriage? You've been married how long?
35 years, man.
35 years. And
Yes.
so this light didn't come on 35
Uh
years ago,
no,
right?
it
It
came up
came on just I'm
recently.
assuming,
Yeah,
right.
I would say
So
in the last
how's
three
that
years.
changed? Right. So how's that changed in some way or affected your relationship now with your wife, Dawn, right?
Yeah, it's changed
Yes.
everything, James, because as an example, you were talking about before we recorded, I thought you were talking about how Eve came from Adam's ribs, you know, and so
Right.
and as I started to see this, everything is one story in the Bible. I mean, it made more sense who Moses was and the role that he played, and even the prophets, the role that they played. It wasn't in, and believe it or not, one of my favorite books, some of my favorite books of the Bible now are Leviticus and Numbers, because I understand what role they play. But so, with regard to my wife and all that stuff, I started to see in the scripture, it's in Genesis, I think it's third chapter. But anyway, when God said, "Hey, man can't be alone. We need to create a helper for him."
That's right.
That word
It-
helper is a Hebrew word. It's translated as helper, but the word it's ezer, which is the same word. In other words, the help that I want this woman to be able to give to man is the same help that I, as God, give to Israel. So that's the
hmm.
relationship that I want to have. So it's like a God-like helper. It's not like the help, like, oh, the wife, she's on the side and I'm in front. She, you need her to survive. I mean, this is
Right.
like, so as I started to see that, um, I started to welcome her help and not you know how sometimes, so I feel like the voice of the Lord sounds like my wife's voice a lot. You know what I mean? And but instead of just feeling like, oh Lord, what's she gonna say about this? You know, now okay, I got to follow these directions. I started to understand that the Lord is speaking to me through her, and so I started to come to her. Hey, babe, this is what I'm thinking about. What you think? Okay, and when we're together, we're unstoppable. Just like when a man understands who he is. So when a man doesn't know that he's a son of God, he'll accept anything. He'll settle for anything. But once he knows that he's a son of God, he's unstoppable. And that changes how he lives. It changes how he leads, prays, loves, you know, even how he raises his kids. It's all from, I know who I am, and so I'm more confident in that. So yeah, so it's affected my marriage. It's affected every area of my life, man.
Wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. So what does in the context of black men,
Yes.
what does finding our identity, coming to terms with who we are,
Yeah.
look like in real time in a society that devalues us as black men, right?
Yeah.
Because we live
Yeah.
in this society that harbors horrible stereotypes and
Yeah.
perceptions about black men
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that are not based in reality, right?
Right. Right. Right.
There's some aspects that may have some truth to it,
Sure.
but some of these things are issues that are in all communities, not just
Yeah. Not
black
just black.
males, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the biggest issue that I see, man, is that black men are living under a false identity. You know, we've been lied to, we've been labeled, we've been conditioned. And I don't think it's just society. I think it's spiritual. I think there's a war on
Mm.
our identity. Um, I think that, in fact, I think that the Satan's biggest strategy, his real strategy, is not even to try to get us to sin. I think it's really to make us forget who we are.
Mm.
And I think that that's been the problem, because if a man doesn't know that he's a son of God, as I mentioned, he'll accept anything. He'll settle for anything. And that's really why I wrote the book Eden to Eternity, because once a man understands that he's a son of God and claims that identity, then it changes everything. I mean, again, like I said, it's one thing to know to love someone. It's a completely different thing to be loved. And so I think for us as Black men, I think that you know, there's the external stuff like you talk about, but I think there's some internal stuff too. I mean, certainly, we've had our history stolen, we've had our, legacy buried, we've had our identity hijacked, and all of that. But the internal battles as well is because I feel like most Black men haven't been told who they really are. And so um so we're out there trying to build these kingdoms, and we don't really have any any affirmation. We don't have any, inheritance, and that's heavy to do that, because I mean, because if you, I mean, and I think it's all tied to identity, because if you strip a man of his name, of his identity, his belief in his own value and self-worth, then either he's gonna just self-destruct, or he's gonna just settle for survival. And I think that that's where we've been. It's just surviving, believing who people say that we are, but it's not the truth, like you said. But if you don't know the
Right.
difference, if you don't know the truth, then you're they're believing the lie. And that's Satan's primary strategy, is when
Yes.
he tempted even Adam and Eve. I mean, he tempted Eve. Adam was the one primarily that sinned, but it was something that he said, hey, will you be like God? Will you really be like God? Or if you do this, you'll be like God. But it's like they already were like God. So they didn't
There
even,
already were.
yeah, so they didn't even realize he's not lying, but he's distorting the truth. But if you don't know the difference, and you have people start to question, like, is that really, can you really do that? I mean, come on, they're like, wait a minute, maybe I can't. So that's where we are, is,
Wow. Wow.
yeah. And I think that's the connection.
Wow. You know what? It's interesting because they were already like God.
Yes,
When he said you can be like God, it
yes.
made them think I can be like God. Like, did they not even know that they already were like God?
Yeah,
Right?
the problem was, if they forgot who they were. Adam
And how
forgot
did
who
that
he was.
happen though? That's the question. How
Well,
did
it happened because he wasn't rooted in who he was. I think that he didn't, maybe he didn't trust God. He didn't spend enough time. I don't know. I think that when just like the prodigal son, man, just like the prodigal son. I love that story. It breaks me down almost every time I read it, because certainly got the one guy, the young son that ran away because he took all his money and left. Um, and then he came, he said, the Bible says, what I love the scripture, he says, then he came to himself. So at some point he remembered, hey, wait a minute, I need to go home, because even if I'm a
Right.
servant at my father's
Yes.
house, that's better than what I've got going on here. So remember who he was. And the great thing was that the father, he he not only did he not beat him up about the fact that you did this, and you better, you're on punishment, all that stuff. He was looking for him. He was looking for him. The Bible says when he was a far way off, he saw him, and then he ran to
Ran
him.
after him. That's right.
Yeah. So, but here's the point that I wanted to make. The other brother said, Dad, what's up? You throwing him this party, you giving him all these gifts. I mean, what's going on? You know what I mean? And he said, the father said to the son, dude, you could have had this anytime. He was like, based on works. I'm a son based on what I do or don't do. So, as opposed to, I'm a son based upon who I am, not because of what I do. And
Yes.
so, and I think that maybe that's where Adam was. He didn't fully understand, fully trust, and I think that all of us are susceptible to that. But Jesus came And like I was saying, who's showing what the son was, Satan tried to do the same thing to him, try to
Right.
tempt him, try to tempt him with food, just like he did with Adam and Eve. But Jesus knew who he was. Satan said, hey, it's written. But then Jesus said, hey, wait, but it's also written. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it was more confidence, more trust, more understanding. And I think that that's the key. So Satan's not doing anything new, but it's
Mm.
just try to shake you on who you are. And if you don't know who you are, then you can be shook. You know what I mean? If I
Right.
ask you what your name is, no, your name's not James Trice. You say, wait a minute, no, dude. I mean, we would have no argument. We would be
Right.
done. But if I said something to you or asked you a question around a subject that you weren't sure about, you're like, well, I don't know. Let me find that. So then that's the part that you're sort of unstable at. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So
That's
anyway,
interesting. Yeah, interesting you say that because when you talk about God being our Father and we being sons of God,
right.
I had a conversation in a previous interview with a brother, and we talked about the reason there's more black men. I mean, there's less black men in the church than there are black women,
Yeah.
and did a little bit of research on it. And one of the reasons, among a few, was that this idea of God and God the Father and the
Yeah.
church and Jesus Christ, the concept is around family. We're a family, right?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that some black men said they can't identify with the quote unquote Christian church
Okay.
is and don't go is because they didn't have a good relationship with their father. And
Yeah.
so how do they say this is my father
Yeah.
when I never had a good relationship? Like myself, I didn't have a good relationship with my
Yeah.
father. And
Oh,
it was
sure.
a struggle for me to like, okay,
Sure.
say this is my father. And
Yeah.
as human beings, you know, we need physical sometime examples, right? Or
We do.
tangible examples of something in order for us to say we got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so a lot of black men say I can't identify with that because I didn't have a good relationship with my father. My father was never there. My father was or very abusive,
Yeah.
or he was not there for me, or he left. Right? I never
Yeah.
seen him. I never met the man. And so
Yeah.
now you want me to call you father,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like, and I had never seen you before at all. So how do I
Yeah.
know that you're gonna take care of me? Because you know one
Yeah.
of the scriptures
That's the
says that
truth.
what father doesn't give their kids good gifts,
Yeah,
right?
100%, 100%. And so I dealt with the same thing, James. I mean, I think that there's problems if you have a father in the home, and there's also problems when you don't have the father in the home. There's still problems. Okay. Um, I think that I wanted to know, why should I believe this? Why should I believe what the Bible is saying? Because I agree with what you're saying. Because I think the whole thing, the whole story of the Bible is a father who never stopped fighting. He lost his son and never stopped fighting to bring him back. That's the whole Bible. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you never, but you got to have confidence in what he's saying, that it's the truth. You know what I mean? And so one of the things that I did to prove it to myself, first of all, I read a book called A Case for Christ. Have you ever heard of that book?
I have not.
Okay. It's by Lee Strobel, I believe his name is. And he was an
Okay.
atheist. His wife had gotten born again. He was an atheist, and he was also an investigative news reporter. And what he did was he said, you know what, I'm sick and tired of this Jesus stuff. I'm going to just prove once and for all this is not true. So he went and did the research. He did the research, talked to scholars that studied the Old Testament, the New Testament, all this stuff, and proved himself that it was the truth. Now, one of the things that he did, he looked at is the prophecies in the Old Testament. Because again, I think the key is that if you're going to believe God, you're going to believe the Bible, he's got to be credible. He's got to be a credible person. Like, can I trust
Mm-hmm.
what he's saying?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the fact that Jesus rose from the dead, as an example, that's a historical fact. I mean, he was seen by 500 people at the same time. There are people outside of the Bible that have corroborated the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. He was alive. And so, so two things. He died in public, and then he was seen alive again. So, and that same, and the prophecies, there's like 365 prophecies in the Old Testament, that because God was saying, hey, when Adam, I mean, when Adam sinned, and God said, hey, you know what, I'm going to send someone that's going to straighten this out. And in order for people to recognize who he was, that's what those prophecies were about. Because I want you to know, I want you to recognize him. He's going to be born of a virgin. He's going to be born in Bethlehem, and all these different things. And and even for one person to fulfill 10 prophecies, it's like one in some, some huge number. I mean, it's like if you took, have you heard those statistics on that before?
I have not. Nope.
Okay, so in order for one person to fulfill only 10 of those prophecies in the Bible, the 365, that's like if you covered the state of Texas with silver dollars and you put an X on one silver dollar, and a person had one chance to dip his hand down and grab that silver dollar with the X on it. That's the likelihood of one person fulfilling 10 of those prophecies, because they were written hundreds of years before Jesus came, you know what I mean? So, and he fulfilled 365 of those prophecies. And so, and again, a lot of the evidence is outside of the church. So, getting back to your question, I think you do the research. I mean, again, I thought the Bible was just, just a book of stories about people in the Bible, but it's not. It's about us. But once you have to understand that, and you understand that by spending time with it. But I think spending time in certain frameworks, like what I was talking about, what God showed me, these frameworks, like that you can see Jesus all through the Bible. You can trace it. You can trace purpose and identity all through the Bible. But if you don't trace it, if you don't use those type of frameworks, then you're just looking at a big book that's like Old Testament, New Testament. What does this mean? And who's God? And what does this have to do with me? But I believe that as you spend time with it, I mean, the Bible says in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, but the Word was God. So in other words, the Bible isn't a book about somebody. The Bible is somebody. And as you understand that and spend time with it, God will reveal himself to you, but you spend time. But
Right.
so that's how it worked for me, because
Right.
I had to understand what it even meant, what it means to me,
Yeah,
and
but
how do I
see,
apply it every day. Yes, go ahead.
right, but you grew up in a home.
Yep.
Your parents were pastors.
Yes.
So, right, you grew up in a Christian home. A
Yes.
lot of people who never grew up in a Christian home went to church every once in a while,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
probably every Easter, and every once in a while in between, just every now and then, right?
Sure, sure,
Don't
sure.
have a Bible in home. How do you convince someone as a black man living in America with all of these
Yeah,
perceptions? How do you
sure.
convince us as black men to want to even go and research it? Because it takes you wanting to know and be more inquisitive about something that you're very, very apprehensive about. And how
Yeah.
do I know I'm not wasting my time doing this?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so this guy, this Lee Strobel guy, now he was a white guy, obviously, but he was an atheist, and he did the research wanting to disprove what was going on. So it's not written as a pastor in a home that's
Right.
grew up in church, loving the Lord. He was sick and tired of what people were saying about that, and he wanted to just end it. So I think that looking at I mean, just independent third party information to research who is God, who is Jesus, what did he do, why should I care? I mean, because again, we've been lied to. We've been lied. Jesus wasn't white. You know what I mean? Jesus wasn't a
That's right.
blue-eyed, you know what I mean? And wherever he was, and I think the other research too, James, like you know, Africa, I mean, we were the first civilization.
Well, and Christianity came from Africa.
And I think that people
Right.
need to understand that. And so that's
Yes.
not
It
it's not
originated in Africa.
right. It's not a
Yes.
white person's religion. I think the white people
Right.
took it and they
Yeah.
and they perverted it, and they wanted to make it seem like this is who Jesus was white and all this stuff, and that's not the truth. But if you research it yourself and look and you say, wait a minute, even where all the stuff took place in the Bible, that wasn't in Europe. You know what I mean?
No.
And
That's right.
so I think that and so to a white person might say, well, who cares? If the first, civilization, Black African civilization was, whatever, 3,500 years ago, but the first, I think it's way than that. It's like 300,000, right? 300,000 years
Mm.
ago,
Right.
but the first European civilization was maybe 4,000 years ago. Why should you care? Why does that matter? Well, it matters because I, I've been conditioned to believe that I've been less than, that I'm less than you.
Yes. Yes.
But the truth is I'm not. You came from me. And so as you start to understand that, you start to connect it with the Bible, you see that the Bible is just it's just retelling a lot of that story. And so, but if we listen, if we only hear it from a white preacher, on Sunday morning, as
Yeah.
opposed to understanding that who Jesus was, because I mean, God, he wants you to trust him, and he's willing to develop a relationship to show you who he is. And so, but that's where I would start, man. I would start with
Right.
just information, history, that's not maybe necessarily in the Bible, or usually it's actually in the Bible, but people don't really know that. So,
Yes.
so that's where I would start, because we need to know who we are, and there's a lot of us, man, that grew up with moms in homes without the dad, or vice versa, and we've
Yeah.
had bad examples of fathers because they didn't. Again, I think it started from Adam forgot who he was, and every man after that is struggling with who he is. And
Yeah.
so we're
Yeah.
just looking, and people are telling us, well, this is who you are. You're a pimp. You're a
Right.
this. You're a that. You're
Right.
a,
You right. Yeah, we've been typecast as
yes.
America's villains.
Right.
We've been the
Threats,
perception of
villains.
us, right? The perception of us is that we're either one of three things. We're either super athletes,
Yes.
amazing entertainers, or
Yes.
criminals, right?
Yeah. And we're more than that. We're more than that. We're sons.
Much
We're
more, right?
heirs. We're
That's
kings.
the least of us.
That's the least of us.
That's the
Yeah.
least of us,
That's the
right?
least of us. You know what I realized, James? I stumbled across this. So I believe that as you start to the Bible in Joshua 1 and 8, and I think that this is a concept that's true of regardless. Moses died. Joshua was taken over. He's trying to figure out, how am I going to lead these millions and millions of people? Moses, how can I do this? And here's what God told him: meditate on the word. Don't let it come out of your mouth. Keep it in your mouth. Meditate on it. Think about it day and night. So as you do that, you'll start to see stuff like, oh wow, I didn't know it was that way. And that process works with anything. And so, um, but as you start to do that, then you start to understand things that maybe you didn't see, and see things in a different way. So, anyway,
Yeah.
man, that's where I would start. And yeah, I think I did I answer the question. We went all over the
You
place.
did. You no
Okay.
no. You answered the question just well, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So with that, as a, what do you think is the what's most challenging about being a black man in America, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
even a black man who's a Christian, right?
100%.
Because
100%.
these things are still there,
They're still
right?
there.
Even some church settings, they teach that black people are inferior, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
They use the Bible to oppress and enslave us,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And so and these perceptions are still out there, and
They
you don't
are.
even hear the church talking about you don't hear the church talking about the disparities that exist and the reason why they exist and that kind of thing. They don't talk about that.
No, they don't. They don't. They try to hide it. So I think that the hardest thing about being black in America, man, is I think that it's the constant pressure of having to prove your worth in a world that's designed to forget who you are.
Mm,
I think that um, you know, we're expected to be strong but not threatening.
mm,
Successful but not cocky and overconfident. Spiritual but not super, not too deep. And then there's that inner battle that I was telling you about before, where you are, you know, we've had our history stolen, all these things have been buried, a legacy buried, and we're out there kind of surviving. And I think that um Yeah, we're just out there, and I think that the key, though, I think that the key is identity. I think that's the solution. I think
Mm,
that because if a man understands that he's a child of God, he's a son of God, and not a slave,
right.
not an outsider,
Mm,
not a mistake, then I think that he moves different. He lives different. He can stop competing and start building. And I think that's the key. And that's really what I am trying to do is I'm trying to tell stories that reveal the truth of who we are. And because I think that that's the key.
okay. Okay. Uh, with regard to us as black men really
Yeah,
coming to know who we are, our identity,
yeah,
um, what are some of the steps that you think we should begin to take? I mean, I know you talk about just beginning to read and study and that kind of thing, but
yeah.
how do we do that um, in a world that is counter to that, that counters us? How do we really play that out? How do we live that out when we walk out in the world, we go to work every day, and we
Yeah.
face these challenges? How do we do that?
Man, I think that we need to fill our minds with the right kind of information. Like I'm saying that don't accept things at face value. I mean, again, it wasn't until until I got to college, which I went to a black college, until I got to
Hmm.
college, I thought that black history was us being slaves. That was what it was. I didn't know anything about kings, and I didn't know that when Europe was dying of the bubonic plague, which was just because of filth and uncleanness, that they were doing in Africa and Europe. I mean, in Egypt, they were doing surgery. They were doing working on astrology. They were
Yes.
so I think it's learning who you are. And I don't
Mm.
think that it's just the Bible. I think that when you learn all the other things, you can that helps to make the Bible more valuable, and you see, wow, this is saying the same thing. But
Yes.
do even online. Who are we? Find out about our history, because that's us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
we've done, and it was so crazy. What's so crazy is that white people they'll try to put us down and all that kind of stuff, but they want to look like us. They want their lips, they want their butt, they want their skin, they want everything to look like us, and they talk about us. Now who's the
Er-
fool?
Right. So somebody said to me, they want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues.
Yes. Well, and who listens to white music? Everybody wants to be black. Everybody wants to dance like us.
Everybody.
They want
Yep.
to yeah, so look around and learn that stuff.
Yes.
Study those things. And I believe that as you study that, again, the history, when I learned, man, the first black civilization, the first civilization was about
Yes.
300,000 years ago, and it was in Africa. So
Yes.
everything came from there. So what does that say about people that have of African descent?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. We running out, man. This is amazing conversation. We're running
Yeah,
out of time. Let me ask you one last question as we
yeah,
end right now.
yeah,
And I want to thank you again. What final words would you say to black men who are listening to us right now? What would you say
yeah,
in closing that you would leave
yeah.
them with? And then, what is a favorite quote or book or
Sure.
a song or whatever that has inspired you?
Okay. What I would say to them is that you're not a mistake. You're not a stereotype. You're not a threat. You're not what happened to you. Um, you are a son. You're an heir. You are royalty with amnesia. Okay.
Hmm.
And it's time to wake up, because there is an inheritance with your name on it. And the enemy's, the devil's greatest fear is that you will find out who you are. Um, and so as far as a quote, one of my favorite quotes is by C.S. Lewis. He said that the Son of God became a man so that men could become sons of God. And
Hmm.
it's a powerful quote, because that's the gospel. That's the gospel. And that's really my life message. That's it. And so, but I think the more you understand and realize what that means, again, you look at Jesus in the New Testament, see all that he did, and then you think of yourself as separate from that. But the Bible said, Jesus said a couple things. When he prayed in John chapter 17, he said, God, Father, show them that you love them just as much as you love me. And so that we're family there. But again, if you've never experienced that, you didn't have anybody that loved you, then you don't know what love is. But I feel like, again, there's an inheritance for you if you just are willing to even be open to the idea that, well, let me investigate this. Let me see
Yes.
what this
Yes.
is even about.
At least
So
check it out. Yes.
yeah, and I
At
think
least check it
that's
out.
at least check it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
All
would say.
right.
Yep. Sorry,
Brother,
Matt.
thank you so much. No, don't apologize at all. This is
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you
Oh,
so
good.
much. And again, we're going to definitely have you come back. I appreciate you so much. Everyone, you've been listening to another episode of YANA. You are not alone. And remember, go on the YouTube page to YANA James Trice, like and subscribe and get others to do so also. And until next time, remember that we are not meant to do life alone. Grace and peace, everyone. See you next time.
YANA is here for you. This is your space to connect, grow, and be heard, because none of us are meant to do life alone.